you're a mom of a spirited child, it's challenging. And the more you can help them foster themselves and become independent and follow their own path, the better they're going to be.
Welcome to Agency for Change, a podcast from KidGlov that brings you the stories of change makers who are actively working to improve our communities. In every episode, we'll meet with people who are making a lasting impact in the places we call home.
Years ago, it was fairly common for students to take home economics or family consumer sciences courses in school, which focused on things like how to manage finances in a home, how to decorate, the basics of cooking and baking and cleaning. Another thing you could learn was how to run a sewing machine and important skills for creating clothing items, or completing craft projects, or even repairing damaged pieces like a ripped pair of jeans or a shirt. And while home economics courses have fallen by the wayside in schools, one organization in New York City is teaching kids sewing as a means of encouraging creativity, developing valuable skills, and using math in a practical application. Today, you're going to hear from the former Nebraska resident who saw a need in the world and created a nonprofit to fill the gap for kids in her community. Hey, everyone, this is Lynn Weinman, President and Chief Strategist at KidGlov. Welcome to another episode of the Agency for Change podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Britta Wheeler, founder and executive director of the Children's Institute of Fashion Arts, which is devoted to expansive education in the culture and craft of clothing. Britta, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lynn. Wow, this is so fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I have really been looking forward to this conversation. And Britta, we talked a bit in the intro about the work that you're doing, but could you tell us more for those of us who aren't familiar with the Children's Institute of Fashion Arts? What do you do and who do you help?
Sure. Well, let's see. So we are a New York City nonprofit arts education organization. I founded the organization in 2017, and we've been running after-school programs in the New York City public schools. Brooklyn, actually are at a family shelter in Brooklyn.
That's cool.
In Manhattan, Queens, around. And that whole landscape is kind of like varied. So you have to kind of navigate and figure out how you're going to do it. But that's really how we've been earning our money. And then we've also received an ongoing grant from the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council to run our main program, which is called the Fashion Arts Workshop. And that consists of a 4-week program where we invite children. So our key group is children because we're the Children's Institute of Fashion Arts. And I really, the core demographic are kids age 7 to 12, 13, maybe.
Yeah.
They're just on fire with making stuff and learning how to use a needle and thread. And some of the most simple kinds of practices are central to are just so important for them to feel empowered. And so that's our core demographic. And this program, the Fashion Arts Workshop, is 4 sessions. So we teach them hand sewing, and we make a little takeaway project from felt day 1. And then days 2 and 3, we just bring in all these fabrics. We get donated fabrics. And I have a group of teachers. The kids just start to play with the fabric and talk to the teachers and figure out what they want to make. Then in week 4, we have a fashion show.
Oh, Britta, it sounds like so much fun.
It's so much fun. It's really amazing to see the transformation of the kids coming in. Most of them don't really know another student in there, or maybe they bring one friend. And then they basically, get to have their ideas come alive. And then the 4th week at the show, we teach them how to walk and show their garment. It's not about beauty. It's not about popularity. It's about feeling confident, walking, showing the project that you made. And it's just really, we haven't blasted it out to a million people. It's just really family and friends. And you can feel the love in the room. And the
Oh,
kids are just beaming and excited and taking it in. And it's amazing. And then I have, some professional photographers that come, and we have music, and it's usually in a different event space than the workshop. So it just really gives the kids an idea that they can do something.
yeah, that sounds so empowering and like so much fun. And okay, so as you explain it, I'm thinking in my mind, Project Runway for kids without the mean judges.
Right. Without the competition,
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of like that, but the kids don't know how to sew, most of them. Well, some of them
yeah,
have had a little bit here and there. But
yeah.
yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah. So, Britta, as I think about what you're doing, it takes me back. I've been on the earth for quite a while now. I remember a time when I was a child, my mother and my grandmother sewed, knitted, or crocheted literally everything in my wardrobe.
Wow.
I learned how to, I've never owned a sewing machine, which I'm feeling kind of out of it right now. But I did learn how to, I'm really good at sewing a button on. I can
Nice.
hem a pair of pants,
Sure.
kind of thing.
Nice.
But I'm not sure I ever taught those skills to any of my kids. So in 3 generations, we've gone from sewing everything to me knowing a little bit to I'm not sure if my kids know how to sew a button on or hem slacks or
Right.
not.
Well, if you
Yeah.
think about it, and I'm probably the same age as you, but if you think about it in that span of time, it's really when the fashion industry, the garment industry outsourced to other countries, and therefore, and there were a lot of government deregulations put in place that allowed cheap imports to come into this country. So, and I've spoken to people in our age range who used
Yeah.
to sew their own clothes and their children's
Yeah.
clothes, but then everything became so inexpensive and disposable that you didn't have to learn those skills.
Right.
And so, but in some ways, I think, learning those skills is completely central to having the idea that you can do something in life.
It's empowering for sure.
I mean, I remember when I was a kid feeling like I didn't know how things were made, like
Hmm.
how does this happen? And I
Hmm.
wanted to know so badly. And then, I was blessed because I had a mom and grandmas that sewed and were doing it. My mom was an artist. And so I got to really see how and learn from them how things were made. And I guess the other thing I wanted to just throw in here over the years, I wasn't exactly sure, how in marketing they always tell you, like, who is your perfect market?
Yeah. Yes.
It's just only in the last several months that I've been able to really identify, like, I'm really interested in those spirited kids
Oh,
who are just,
yeah.
they're alive, they want to know, they are active, they're
Yeah.
emotional, they're creative, they want to get their hands in it and do something. And we just don't have a lot of room for that kind of individuality, that kind of expression. And so that would be my key demographic in terms of the kind of kid that I was and the kind
Yeah.
of
Me
world that,
too.
yeah, the kind of world I want to create room for, room
Yeah.
for those kids.
Britta,
So,
I love that so much because you think about, after school sports or maybe music clubs or different clubs, they kind of are looking for kids that maybe fit a mold. And
mm,
you have painted the picture of kids that are outside of that mold, that are really
exactly.
looking for an outlet for their creativity and probably that could really benefit from some positive confidence building.
Right. And part of what we do in the classrooms are to foster this authenticity that, you just don't have a lot of room for that
Yeah.
in these other kinds of groups, especially in school. If you're different, I mean, which I was, all
Yeah.
my friends were, you
Yes.
know, if you're a little different, it's just really hard to feel like you can have your own tribe. I
Yeah.
mean, you do kind of, you know, whatever, have like an island of misfits, you know, like,
Yes, I
but
identify with that so much.
right, right. But there is room in this world for people to have their own vision. And, you know, I think as a grown up, there's not a lot of people really, you know, moving forward. Well, I don't know, this could be argued, but with their own creative vision for things.
Yeah.
You know, so there is, I mean, I have a collection of books you can see behind me, you know, and others on the shelves out there, but there have been collecting books about the creative spirit and innovation, and all of these things get codified now, especially in our internet world. Everything's kind of packaged already. And
Hmm.
so the kids, especially now, the ones growing up who are not just digital natives, but smartphone natives,
Yeah.
they're really like channeled into these games and these learning methods, and you're supposed to have outcomes and plop out all the same and ready to work in your corporate America or whatever. And I'm just trying to foster the idea that there's room, you know, there's a lot of freedom to choose and make your own choices and follow your own path.
Yeah.
It's not always easy for people to understand, especially kids in this world, you know.
Fantastic. Since you mentioned your bookshelf, I do want to just tell for people who aren't watching, who are just listening, Britta's bookshelf is color coded. So right behind her are the pink books, and then the blue books, and above them are the white books, and below are the black books. I love that way of organizing your bookshelf, Britta.
Well, I
It's so
organized
cool.
it because I started this podcast, or it's a YouTube show called Fashion Library Review. So this is my fashion library behind me, and I started to just talk about books that I love. And so you can find that on our website.
Fantastic. Britta, we'll make sure to link the Fashion Library Review YouTube link in our show notes as well for people who want to see it and who want to see your super cool bookshelf. So just to be clear, though, we've talked a lot about kids and empowering kids, and you for marketing people, you painted that great picture, the persona of who your target audience is. But I understand you provide an outlet for adults as well. Is that true?
Well, I'm an adult, so
Yes.
we have teachers that we train, and I'm brainstorming new programs. We recently moved into an office space sponsored by another nonprofit organization, Shashama, here in New
Mm.
York City. If you're familiar with what's happening in the city right now, not all the office workers are back in Midtown.
Yes. So it kind of seems like not the same hustle and bustle that was there before the pandemic.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so we're fortunate to receive this beautiful office space where we can hold some programs. So we're trying to brainstorm and think about how we might have, you know, intergenerational classes or a group. But this is something that I'm dreaming of. The real vision for the CIFA has been to build a maker museum in the garment district.
Oh, I love that.
And that would, of course, be for families. We would want to have all kinds of maker labs, you know, wet and dry, fabric and other materials, tech, high and low tech. The machines are so fascinating. And then also commemorate the history of the garment district. Any immigrant group coming through America has started in that
Yeah.
field. And then that whole district and industry created the American middle class in the 20th century. And as you know, I'm a sociologist. So I
Yes.
was researching some of that in this course I was teaching at New York Institute of Technology. And so I basically researched the history of the garment district and how the field started. The industry really started with the Civil War, and the North won the Civil War because they had good uniforms and everyone felt
They
like they
can
were
stay
part of it.
warm, and
Yeah.
they're
And they
wow.
identified the rank of each individual, and they all felt part of the same team, you know, and so that would boost a morale and a confidence that maybe the southern states didn't have. And it was
Wow.
all because of the port of New York City and the immigrant labor that made the garments. So
That's amazing. So since we're on the topic of fashion, is there any, and you're obviously an expert in this area, Is there anything that people typically get wrong about fashion, Britta?
Well, oh my goodness. Fashion is a whole can of worms. When I was growing up, there was a lot of, kind of more democratic ideals surrounding fashion. It was the era of women's sportswear. You didn't have to have icons and logos, and it wasn't so much about status. It was really just like looking good and being professional or having the right garment to wear for the right event. In the last number of years, it's really changed and turned into this status, more increasingly a high status venture, and luxury is being like touted as the reason for fashion. And I disagree with that. I
Mm,
think there's room for other things. Fashion, for a lot of people that grow up in poverty or in other difficult circumstances, fashion can be a way to build their own status and present themselves in a way that makes sense and can grow into a different level. But you don't have to pretend. It's a lot of it right now, I feel, is about pretense.
yeah.
You don't have to pretend to be something you're not to have confidence. So that's one issue. But it's interesting because I grew up in Nebraska. My parents were
Yes.
both native Nebraskans. I graduated from the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, having studied textiles and clothing design at the East Campus at
Yep.
UNL.
Yep.
And fashion has a bad name. I think in America, especially because we're so pragmatic, that
Yeah.
a lot of people see fashion as extravagant, wasteful, putting on an act. And so it doesn't always align with basic American values of
Yeah.
hard work, diligence, making the world a better place for people. There's a stigma that goes along with it, along with women's issues, women's work.
Yeah.
Sewing has been denigrated and outsourced and underpaid. We're seeing a lot of changes happening now in the world. Well, we'll see. So many changes.
Yeah, that's right.
But
That's right.
but there is an effort in New York State to Kristen Gillibrand just proposed a bill that would ensure like fair labor pay for garment
Yeah.
workers. And I think there is, and we'll see, because of course, like I mentioned before, a lot of the industry has been outsourced for cheaper labor around the world. But there is an effort right now, especially with our current crises with our working classes, to reshore American labor, to
Yeah.
reshore the industries that were left behind. The southern states were key in textiles and manufacturing, and same in New York. But a lot of those jobs have left, and they were good jobs. People could
Yeah.
become middle class, like I said. So, we'll see how that goes. I know there are some efforts in Detroit. They're working on building a manufacturing center there, and I know there are some people in the South who are working to, develop other industry avenues down there as well. So let's just see. I'm hoping that that's true.
Yeah, it would be great to see the resurgence of that work coming back to the States, and the quality of the craftsmanship returning, and having a good, strong lifestyle for the people who are in the
Yeah.
industry as well.
Well, people will have to get used to paying higher price probably, and then they'll have to shift their consumption practices accordingly,
Right.
and maybe not buy such trendy clothes that they'll just throw away, or they will get
But
really
more classics, right? Yes.
possibly, yeah. I think that people will, if all those changes occur, people will then be paying attention to the environmental issues involved,
Right.
because a
Right.
lot of and so we're concerned about that. And sustainability, of course, is a buzzword in the industry. There's been a lot of, quote unquote greenwashing, like,
Yes.
the advertising and the marketing says, oh, we're so great, but then really, okay, so, and there was news a few years ago now that fashion industry globally is one of the main polluters in the world. So there's a lot of, and fashion people don't want to be seen as evil.
No,
But no,
heavens no.
they're portrayed like that in kids' cartoons,
Yeah, that is
endangered
true. It
animals,
is an
and.
industry that gets a bad rap in fiction, I think.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
there, in every industry, there's good people. So they're taking it seriously. And there are now many practices in industry that no waste
Yeah.
practices and no extra water. In fact, I was at a talk at a conference a few years ago before the pandemic, and there was a company there who was working in, I think it was Pakistan, and they were talking about it was a dye company, and they were talking about how the wastewater from the area and actually filtered it through their factory and then produced clean water on the other side.
Wow.
So, that gives me hope.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think just, as a consumer, the whole practice of buying garments that are going to last you, so that you want to know how to sew on a button and make
Right.
some basic repairs because you want that piece to last you for a long time. Hey, Britta, I want to take a quick break here to share a message from one of our favorite podcast partners.
As a podcast listener, you already know the power of the human voice to take messages from the ear to the brain to the heart. I'm Mark, a creative coach dedicated to the study of what motivates people to take action. In my podcast, I chat with leaders who think beyond marketing, who are building long-lasting connections with people who'll pay them lots of money to do the important work the world needs. You can follow the podcast and check out previous episodes at earbrainheart.com. That's earbrainheart.com.
All right, everyone, you are listening to Agency for Change, and we are jumping back into our conversation with Britta Wheeler of the Children's Institute of Fashion Arts. So, Britta, when you founded CIFA in 2017, I'm curious, what gave you this idea? Like, what was the gap in the world that you were looking to fill?
Wow. Okay, so here's some of the backstory.
Yeah, yeah.
But I like how you're asking
I
the question.
always love the backstory.
So, as I've said, I was a spirited child, and I grew up playing piano, playing guitar, sewing, knitting,
You were very
crocheting,
artsy, very artsy.
painting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very artsy. And my mom, like I said, my mom was an artist, and my dad was a sociologist at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I grew up in Omaha after having lived in Ralston for many years. As a child, we moved to Omaha, and I went to Omaha Central. I ventured forth in my life thinking I was going to be a fashion designer. I got discouraged when I realized business end of things, and I couldn't quite see myself doing that. Then I moved to Minneapolis. I'll make the long story short. I played in bands. I worked as a pastry chef and kind of just tried to find myself. And eventually I went back to school for sociology. This was in the mid 80s. And then I decided to go and get a PhD in sociology. So I moved to California, did my PhD out there. But I was trying to piece together the relationship between art and society.
Yeah.
And having these parents in Nebraska, Nebraskan parents,
Yes, which tends to be, we all picture, life in Nebraska as somewhat conservative, maybe a bit more agrarian, yeah.
So my parents were very independent, interesting people with, that didn't fit the mold.
Yeah.
Right? And so I kind of had it in the back of my head that I needed to figure this out. What is this story between art and society? And so I ended up writing a PhD dissertation as a sociologist about the institutionalization of performance art.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Talk about specialized, right? And so I kind of took a deep dive in the intellectual realm and read all about the history of the avant-garde. And then as a sociology professor, which then I became, I was teaching classes that included that discussion of, art in America, what is culture in America,
Yeah.
American culture, questions about elitism versus, popular culture. And so I was able to really piece all those things together. And I had a job at the time. And I moved to New York. I got a postdoc at NYU as the art worlds professor in the Draper Interdisciplinary Master's Program for Social Thought and Humanities.
Wow, that
You
sounds
know,
very, very big.
it was good. It was interesting. And of course I felt out of place, being a homegirl from Nebraska, but I managed, I put on the act. And then I actually was there at 9/11. So I was living
Oh,
downtown at
wow.
9/11. And,
I
you know,
bet we could do a whole episode just on what that must have been
oh
like.
my goodness. Yeah, that's a whole other story. And then I did end up landing at the Art Institute of New York City, and I taught there for 13 years. And I had classes in both the fashion design department and the general education, where I taught sociology. And so doing that, and the students that went there were very much urban. It was a for-profit college, and so they had open admissions. And so basically I got really good at being a foreman in the clothing construction lab,
Wow,
and
yeah.
analyzing that. So I've written some stuff on that. Hopefully I'll have that book at some point. But piecing all those things together led me to be thinking about the fashion design and fashion industry from a sociological point of view, but I never was able to kind of let go of the art.
Yeah.
Right. And so the school that I was teaching at was seeking to be able to offer a bachelor's program, which then, even though I had a master's and PhD in sociology, they said, well, in order to keep teaching in fashion, you need to have a design master's.
Oh my
So
goodness. Did you go back and get another degree?
I did. And
Wow.
I love school. So
Yeah.
it was
I
great.
can tell your curiosity, your passion for learning. I can completely understand that.
Oh my goodness. And so I was able to find an interdisciplinary art program in Vermont. It was a low residency program, and I could go up twice a year and then do the work I needed to do. And so from that program, I developed this performance art character named Belinda Powell,
I love it.
who was a home sewer and played ukulele and sang. And I was trying to, as a feminist and a sociologist, I was trying to express this shift in popular cultural identity and what was understood as like the right kind of person in the world, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a blonde, I'm a Nebraskan, and so I was expressing this kind of 20th century character type, but in the 21st century. And so
Yeah.
it's like, oh, okay, let's and my parents always raised me to be smart and not rely on my looks, because that was like, temporary.
That was a cop out, right? Yeah.
Right. Your
Yep.
parents too.
Yes, my parents too. Being smart was where it was at. Yep.
Exactly. And so I got to create this character, and it was really through that character. And I did that character for like 5 years. I wrote some songs, played ukulele, made some videos, and then wore pink.
I
And
love it.
and then it was through that character I was like, well, I don't really want to be an entertainer. What is this? Where's it going to go? And so I had this idea for the CIFA.
Wow.
I know it's kind of like an artistic way.
I love why I love to hear people's backstories. It's fascinating to me how the tapestry of your life comes together to just land you at the perfect place, right?
Well,
Like
thank you.
all of those things come together.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, like as a child, I mean, sometimes we have an idea in our head about where we're going and what we need to do, but the path is never straight, right?
Yeah.
You're always like,
Yes.
well, let me try over here. Oh, is that right? Oh, over here. And I mean, I had a lot of doors close and then I had to refigure it out. So, so far the CIFA has been good because doors keep opening,
That's
you know?
amazing.
And that was, we're not the massive organization that I might envision, but I was enlivened and made more confident by receiving grants,
Yes.
from the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. And then this year we received our first New York State Council on the Arts grant as well. So
I'm really curious, Britta. You started in 2017. It's now 2022. I mean, the pandemic happened fairly early in the creation of this program. How did the pandemic impact your work?
well, it's interesting because everyone and their grandma got online
Yes,
in the
yes.
pandemic.
Even grandmas
And we
got
did
online.
too. Yeah, we did
Yeah,
too.
yeah,
But March 2020, that was a pivotal moment and all our after school programs closed.
yeah.
But I was fortunate because I was still working as a college professor and I hadn't really tapped the CIFA or gotten an income yet. And I was just doing it as a passion project. And so we had some money in the bank. And so I was able to just continue to work. And that's actually when we developed a lot of our online programs. We actually have a whole curriculum for online classes, and I've developed some strategies for teaching online. And I mean, who could think that you could teach sewing online? But
Right.
we had a successful 2020, October 2020. We ran our complete fashion arts workshop online.
Wow.
We sent packages of materials and supplies to
Wow.
all over the country, and we did the whole thing online. We did a lot of live online teaching. We had videos, etc. And then that's also when I created the Fashion Library Review YouTube show. And thank gosh we survived. And I think we're a little stronger because of it. And I think that's what's going to help us kind of expand and into the media landscape in a more direct way,
Yeah.
because it was almost like, I mean, I think people might feel this way too. Like, go to your room, like go to your
Yeah.
room and figure it out, like, okay,
Yes.
no problem.
Don't come out. Yeah.
Yeah, don't come out.
I love it. So you're primarily in New York City now. Do you see a nationwide expansion, a global
I would
expansion?
I would love that.
Yeah.
I think it would serve our population, and kids would be enlivened and communities would be enlivened if people were more productive and interested in, producing. I
Yeah.
think I think we could help foster a better world. I'm kind of thinking about, how can we mend the social fabric, like
Right. Right. Wow, that's a big undertaking, right?
yeah,
But
one
maybe this
stitch
is the idea that will do it, right?
one stitch at a time,
One stitch at a time. That's fantastic. There's your tagline right there. One stitch, mending the social fabric, one stitch at a time. So, Britta, I'm curious, when you do the virtual programs, do kids have access to sewing machines, or do you just do some of the things that are not involved with sewing machines when you're virtual?
Yeah, we have a class called Sewing Machine Basics. So if kids have a machine, a lot of kids do. We
Yeah.
don't recommend getting the kid machines. We recommend getting the good, simple home sewing machines. Those are
Yeah.
great. They'll last forever if you treat them right. And then, but I love hand sewing. I think hand
Yeah.
sewing is so great. It's grounding. You can really do a lot with it, and
Yeah.
you can see the progress. But the kids love the machine. They don't have the
Yeah.
patience.
Yeah.
They don't have the
Yeah.
patience. They want a
Yeah.
sewing machine.
They want to get that machine going until they get their thread all balled up, and then it's
Ah!
that's what I remember about sewing. So actually, Britta, your website talks about the importance of knowing how to sew. I'm curious, what kind of life lessons does sewing teach kids?
Wow, that's a great question. Well, there's a lot of emphasis these days in New York City about mindfulness. I suppose it's everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mindfulness and taking time to calm down. And certainly sewing is a good way to be grounded. I've always
Yeah.
had a project-based lifestyle myself. So like instead of getting on my phone and doom scrolling,
Yeah.
like
Doom
people do,
scrolling. Nobody needs to do more of that.
no, it's depressing. And so, if you can just shift your attention over to what's my project? What am I making now? Then for me, it just provides a lot of hopefulness,
Yeah.
like when I have a project that I'm dreaming of wearing and where am I going to wear it and what am I going to do with it? Who am I going to give it to?
Yeah.
That's a useful skill to have something to look forward to, because I think these days a lot of people are pretty depressed and
Right.
it's in our interest to be hopeful,
Yeah.
honestly. And so, as far as life skills, I'm a big proponent of sewing is knowing. That's another one of
Ah,
my taglines.
nice.
So
Nice.
sewing is knowing, and materials, right? So getting off the screen, understanding materials, sewing and clothing and fabric and textiles. That's the link between the natural world and human culture, right?
Mm.
So the four natural fibers, cotton, linen, wool, and silk,
Yeah.
those all have different properties. And so you can become a scientist about how those fibers and fabrics work. The process of weaving is also, from the
Hmm.
natural environment to the human culture. And so there's a lot of stuff to learn in all of those things. And also just the other thing, and maybe this is getting to a higher level of learning, is really about design thinking, right? So if you
Yeah.
start out the
Such a
kid,
big topic right now in
yeah,
our world of marketing is design thinking.
oh wow,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's a conversation to have.
Yeah.
And yeah, design thinking. And so as a designer, as an artist, just to get the kids understanding sequence, how does one thing fit together with another thing? I mean, I was teaching, we have a program we've had for 5 years now. We're all back in the schools as of last year,
Yeah.
so we're back in the schools now. But we have a program in Chinatown, and a lot of the kids there are new immigrants, right? Or their
Yeah.
families, their first generation
Right.
Americans. But I had a child down there, a boy, who it's clear to me he's going to be an engineer or some kind of scientist. But he took to the sewing so incredibly. He basically was inventing things, and they were
Wow.
funny, weird things like a bag with zippers on both sides that he would unzip and put on his head, and it had like a pocket in it, and then he was making like this weird frog thing with it was just like, yeah, that's how people learn, is through
Yeah.
play and creativity. And if you give kids the tools for easily doing it, then they can go in any direction. They can use it to invent,
Mm.
like he was, and he was fantastic,
I love that. I love that, Britta. That's a great story. I mean, you are obviously making an impact on the community, on kids, on families. So what's next? What's next for CIFA? Are there any big goals that you're working towards?
Yeah. Well, I do finally have a team.
Congratulations. Like that is a monumental step in the evolution of a nonprofit or a for-profit. So
Yeah,
congratulations to you.
thank you. The life of an entrepreneur, right?
Right,
Kind of
right.
wearing lots of hats, doing everything. So I finally have a team just as of the last several months, and they're very excited. And, that's how I knew this was a good project, because when I saw, and this is the other part of the core audience, the excitement that people
Mm-hmm.
have. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody, there's always that.
But you also don't need everybody, right? You
Right.
need to find your people. I think
Yeah.
any entrepreneur, you need to find your people, the people who are so excited about what you're doing that they want to take the leap and be on your team, or the people who you're going to serve with your mission, find your people? Yeah.
Exactly. And I knew it was okay. And I had a group of people because I saw that excitement. And so that excitement and just like that girl energy of like,
Yes.
like
I think we're having it right here, actually.
exactly. And so I have team members that are in that, they get it and they're
Yeah.
excited and they want it to build. So we're just in the process right now of kind of retooling after our 5th fashion arts workshop. And now we have this space that we can begin to run some programs in. And we're thinking in the new year, 2023, that we'll begin to offer some weekend programs. And then, we'd love to continue to build and make connections with people and build towards this maker museum idea that I
Absolutely.
have, as New York City rebounds and gets itself in order. We'll
Yeah.
have a place where kids and families can come to learn more about the making process and the fashion industry.
I want to see CIFA makers labs across the country, Britta. Could we
Me
work towards
too.
that?
Yes, please. Yes,
I
please.
love it.
Let's
I
do
love
it.
it. I'm going to switch gears and ask you my favorite question, because
Okay.
I feel honored that I get to talk with so many interesting people like yourself. And I am inspired by motivational quotes. And
Okay.
so, what I am curious, can you give us an original Dr. Britta Wheeler quote that will inspire our listeners?
Oh my goodness. No
No
pressure.
pressure at all. I know. Honestly, I feel like you've said about a dozen things, since we've started this, but so many good things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I guess sewing is knowing.
I love it.
Skills pay the bills. That's a good one.
Those are great.
And I mean, the ones that are kind of, I don't know if I rely on quotes so much, but I just always have to follow my own path.
Yeah.
And it's not easy because I want people to like me. I want to be on the team, I want
Yeah.
to, what's a way to say it? Authenticity is key.
For sure.
And, maintain your sense of humor, even in spite of yourself.
I love it. That is a great life coping mechanism for sure. Very good. Well, you've just rattled off, I think, five inspirational quotes there. So thank you for all of those.
Thank you.
So we've talked about your website a couple of times, but for our listeners who would like to learn more, what's the best way to find out about CIFA?
Yeah. Well, we're on social media at the CIFA.org.
Okay.
And our website is www.thecifa.org, at thecifa.org,
Okay.
whatever it is.
We'll have that linked in the show notes for everyone.
And yeah, that's the best way. We have everything pretty much there on the website. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. I'm always available to talk with people or email if they, we're small enough, I can still do that.
That's fantastic.
And, we will have programs in person in New York City going forward and hopefully elsewhere too. So
that's great. Fantastic. So Britta, this has been such a fun conversation. As we wrap up today, what is the most important thing you would like our listeners to remember about the work that you're doing?
Well, thank you. Yes, I think for parents who have spirited kids, there is a lot of material online. There's a great book by a woman, Sursinka, who's made her career writing about the psychology of spirited kids. But if you're a mom of a spirited child, it's challenging. And the more you can help them foster themselves and become independent and follow their own path, the better they're going to be in life. If you can find other kids who are also more individual, maybe don't follow the mainstream norm, you can foster that. And so I guess specifically for the CIFA though, I mean, the work we're doing is to help the world.
Yeah.
We'd like to get kids off the screen and onto the runway or just
Yeah.
into their own projects. Project-based life can lead you a long way, and it doesn't have to be for sale. It can be from the heart. It can be for your own edification. It can be art.
Yeah. Britta, I just love how you have combined your passion and your background and your knowledge of teaching and fashion into this great nonprofit. So thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm going to say, I truly believe the world needs more people like you and more nonprofits like CIFA. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lynn. It was a pleasure to talk with you.
We hope you enjoyed today's Agency for Change podcast. To hear all our interviews with those who are making a positive change in our communities, or to nominate a changemaker you'd love to hear from, visit KidGlov.com at KIDGLOV.com to get in touch. As always, if you like what you've heard today, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.